Hey, what's up guys? Welcome to the channel. We have a bunch of potential fight news today, between the leaks of Dana White's War Room Wall to now a report by ESPN's Brett Okamoto that the UFC is finalizing a matchup at UFC 276, July 2nd, International Fight Week, an amazing bantamweight fight between Sean O'Malley and Pedro Munhoz. Now, whether you're a Sean O'Malley cult-like following lover, or you're one of the people who have been claiming you want to see Sean O'Malley test it, which I believe he's being tested again. We'll talk about that in a minute. You should be happy with this fight announcement. I am super happy about this fight. We're going to talk about this fight a little bit. Then at the end of the video, I'm going to give you my early prediction for this fight. So if you're one of the people who have been claiming, you want to see Sean O'Malley test it, because you look at his resume, he's 15-1, and his resume, the names on his resume are just awful. And I know he has wins over Eddie Wineland and Thomas Almeida, but these guys were far past their prime and were really not that good, and Sean O'Malley was supposed to beat these fighters. And, his most recent win was against Raulian Paiva, who I know is still on the UFC roster. Outside of that, I'm not even sure Chris Montinho is still on the UFC roster after losing to 42-year-old Guido Canetti. So essentially, Sean O'Malley, even though he's been in the UFC since 2018, 4 years, he only has 2 wins over fighters on the current UFC roster, potentially only 1 if Chris Montinho did get cut. And let's be real, Chris Montinho was never UFC caliber to begin with. I know the bar has fallen, but Chris Montinho did not belong in the UFC. He got the opportunity on short notice just because Sean O'Malley needed an opponent after Luis Smoka pulled out. The one time, and this is the reason I said Sean O'Malley's getting tested again, the one time that Sean O'Malley had a little bit of a step up in competition was against Marlon Chito Vera at UFC 252. And we saw what happened in that fight. Marlon Chito Vera chopped the legs. He hit that nerve. Sean O'Malley got drop foot. Then he got shucked to the ground and then brutally flash KO'd with heavy ground and pound elbows. And then he was stretchered out of the cage with no serious injury. And I know a lot of people like to talk about it. Oh, this was a fluke. Sean O'Malley was chewing him up beforehand. The fight was 50-50 beforehand. Go back and watch the fight. The fight was very close. Neither guy was particularly taking over the fight. And again, it doesn't matter what happened. This was a first-round KO stoppage by Marlon Chito Vera. Sean O'Malley was damaged by Marlon Chito Vera's kick. I don't want to hear the excuse. Sean O'Malley did not go out there and slip on a banana peel. So since this loss, Sean O'Malley's got 3 impressive performances against less than great competition. He KO'd Thomas Almeida, he TKO'd Chris Montinho, and he has the most recent win, the TKO over Raulian Paiva, which I believe a lot of people, I know Raulian Paiva is definitely the best fighter he's ever faced outside of Marlon Chito Vera, but Raulian Paiva, people elevated the perceived skill set of Raulian Paiva just so they could pretend like it was a big win for Sean O'Malley. The UFC was doing it. A lot of MMA media was doing it. A lot of Sean O'Malley's cult-like following was doing it. But now we're finally going to see what Sean O'Malley is really made of against Pedro Munhoz. And you look at Pedro Munhoz, I know a lot of people could say that Sean O'Malley's getting Pedro Munhoz at the right time. Pedro Munhoz has lost 4 out of his last 5. His only win is a decision win over Jimmy Rivera back in February of last year. But I'm not going to be one of those people. I'm not going to be one of those people that discredit Pedro Munhoz just so I can laugh if Sean O'Malley loses, or if Sean O'Malley wins, I can still say he hasn't beat legitimate competition. Pedro Munhoz is criminally underrated. And you look at these fights, he almost stopped Dominic Cruz in the first round. Dominic Cruz somehow survives, come back to win the decision. The fight before that, he lost to Jose Aldo fair and square. It was a competitive fight, but Jose Aldo at 135 is just a different beast. The Jimmy Rivera win, Jimmy Rivera was underrated. That's a solid decision win. The Frankie Edgar split decision loss, he should have beat Frankie Edgar. That was basically a robbery at that point in time. And then he has a loss to Aljamain Sterling, who is the current bantamweight champion. So if Sean O'Malley is able to get past Pedro Munhoz, I will be very impressed, because this is a very tough matchup for Sean O'Malley, and it's about time. I mean, only for so long can the UFC kind of bring you along slowly and kind of cherry pick these winnable fights for you. Pedro Munhoz is no easy fighter to beat. And Pedro Munhoz, I know that Sean O'Malley is going to have a significant reach advantage over him, but Pedro Munhoz, stylistically, is just not a great matchup for Sean O'Malley. What is Pedro Munhoz known for? He's known for his brutal leg kicks, which Sean O'Malley does not have great leg durability if you look through his history of MMA. And then Pedro Munhoz is known for his granite chin. Look at that war with Cody Garbrandt. He ate bombs from Cody Garbrandt. Eventually is one of the first guys to sleep Cody Garbrandt. And Pedro Munhoz is also known for his power. So this is going to be super interesting because I think Sean O'Malley's going to have to try to hang on the outside and kind of land, use his length and land big shots on Pedro Munhoz and probably eke out a decision. But Pedro Munhoz is going to press forward, chop the legs, and look for big punches himself. And it's going to be hard to get in on Sean O'Malley. Sean O'Malley's taller than him, longer than him. And this is going to be a very compelling matchup. And I, for one, will be super impressed if Sean O'Malley is able. Could you imagine if he gets a stoppage win over Pedro Munhoz? I mean, Pedro Munhoz has never been knocked out, never been submitted. Pedro Munhoz has only ever lost via decision. And I know you could say, Pedro Munhoz over the past few years has maybe taken a little bit of a step back, but I still believe he is one of the best 135ers in the world. So I find this matchup super compelling because if O'Malley can go out there and beat Pedro Munhoz, whether it's by decision, TKO, or KO, I will be super impressed, and I want to see him, jump up the top 10 rankings and fight some of these guys like Dominic Cruz, Rob Font, Merab Dvalishvili, Corey Sandhagen, Jose Aldo. It'll be very interesting because Sean O'Malley currently sits at 13. He's never beat a ranked top 15 fighter in his entire UFC career. And if he can beat Pedro Munhoz, who's sitting at number 10 right now, he's going to jump into that top 10. And once you're in that top 10, especially at 135 pounds, that division is an absolute shark tank. I mean, just look at the division. Sterling, which I would love to see O'Malley after this fight. If he's able to win, I would love to see O'Malley tested against a grappler. But Sterling, a great grappler. Then you have Petr Yan. I mean, speaks for himself. One of the pound for pound best fighters in the world. TJ Dillashaw, Jose Aldo, Corey Sandhagen, Marlon Vera. That rematch is always there. Merab Dvalishvili, Rob Font. I've already named some of these guys. But the division is absolutely filthy. So if Sean O'Malley goes out there, beats Pedro Munhoz, I am super excited for his next fight. As far as an early prediction goes, I'm actually 50-50 on this fight because I know Pedro Munhoz, I think he's a little bit slower. I think the reach disadvantage is not going to be great for him. But I just think his durability combined with his leg kicks, I think he's probably going to beat Sean O'Malley. I just don't think Sean O'Malley has the durability to go out there and fight in an all-out war with Pedro Munhoz, and I have a hard time seeing Sean O'Malley putting him away. I know Sean O'Malley has one-punch KO power, but Pedro Munhoz has a granite chin, never been KO'd, as I already mentioned. So maybe Sean O'Malley wins that first round, just kind of keeping his distance, but Pedro Munhoz is going to press forward, chop those legs, slow down the movement of Sean O'Malley, and eventually I think he's either going to hurt his legs with some of the leg kicks or eventually find one of his big shots with a hook, close the distance, hurt Sean O'Malley, and finish him on the ground. But this is just my early prediction, so I reserve the right to change my mind as the fight gets closer, which I'll do a more in-depth breakdown and prediction. But let me know in the comments, what do you think of this fight? Who do you think is going to win, Pedro Munhoz or Sugar Sean O'Malley? Let me know down in the comments. Don't forget to like the video, and thank you so much for watching.